and also low level of awareness and appreciation of clean cooking among the population. So with the recommendation, there is a recent publication of the African Union, sorry, there is a recent publication of the African Union Energy Commission uh, with MEX, Modern Energy Services. And I just adopt their recommendation. It's a 2024 publication, very current and very comprehensive. So I just adopted their recommendation for consideration and discussions under this platform. Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you very much for such an exhaustive presentation. I mean, you covered the frameworks aside the Sustainable Development Goal 7. You also talked about the UNFCCC standards, the ISO standards, and even the regional standards from the African Renewable Energy Commission. That was quite insightful. You also went ahead to um, mention the efforts that are ongoing in the at the national level. Of course, we expected you to give the context from Ghana and not Africa generally. Of course, that would be such a cumbersome task. So thank you for sharing with us the amazing work that is going on in Ghana with regards to the clean cooking policies, the efforts made so far, the opportunities. Of course, it brings in investment, it brings in empowerment. And of course, I picked one notable thing that there is a carbon market office in Ghana and it's working. And we see that this is one of the problems that some African countries have. They are yet to have a framework for their carbon markets. Some are yet to even have the policy, but it's so positive to know that Ghana is ahead. They are up in their game. So congratulations to Ghana on that. And just to add that if you have any question, for want of time, would your questions will be addressed during the question and answer session. So keep your questions. You could type it in the chat box, or you could wait till then, and if time permits, you'd unmute to ask your questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, for such a wonderful and amazing presentations. Thank you for the insights you've shared. I believe each and every one of us on this call, we have learned a lot from this presentation. So we'll be moving to the next agenda, which is the poll questions. So the poll questions is on the screen. Kindly confirm in the chat box that you can see the poll questions. This question is mainly to test awareness, the general awareness. How well do you know about the clean cooking solution, clean cooking technologies, SDG Goal 7, and so on. So the exercise is lasting for 5 minutes. Okay, I can see that one person has submitted. Samuel. Encourage everyone to take part in the poll question session. We'll be rounding up soon with the poll questions. Do well to engage.
Hmm. Which policy should a proper government implement?
Okay, I guess by now everyone must have engaged in the poll questions, as I've not seen any complaints to that effect that there is any problem with accessing the poll questions. So we'll be rounding up soon. So the poll question session has come to an end. I'll be sharing the results right away. Based on the Question one we have here, do you use a clean cooking solution at home? And the response, oh, this is quite amazing and positive. We got more of yes than no. And then on the familiarity, positive one, two. The level of awareness, positive one. Yes, all the responses were positive. Thank you very much for engaging. So we'll be moving to the next item on the agenda, which is okay. Before we proceed to the paper presentation, I would during the opening remark of the COO, Engineer Anthony, he briefly highlighted that we have an upcoming concept called the Good Clean Advocates. And this is basically to encourage people in the grassroots, no matter their location across Africa, to um, not be weary in advocating for clean cooking adoption, the use of clean cooking solutions like LPG, cooking with electricity, with improved cook stoves and so on. So I would leave it to the COO, Engineer Anthony, to further throw more light on this concept and the eligibility criteria as well. Over to you, Engineer Anthony.
Okay, thank you very much, Owen. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, for the wonderful presentation. And to our panelists who are already on the call waiting, Princess Odiaka and also Said Swahel, thank you so much for joining in. And just to go straight to uh, the Cook Clean Advocate program that we are also introducing as part of this webinar series, like I mentioned before. Our aim for this is to continue the advocacy away from this the webinar we are having. So to become a Cook Clean advocate, uh, first of all, you must demonstrate a basic understanding of SDG7, be passionate about clean cooking and committed to advocating for sustainable clean cooking solutions. Attend at least 5 editions of 54 Sparks webinar, and you must also be available for training virtually and complete the cooking advocate training module. Then you must be committed to carrying out at least one clean cooking awareness activity in your community. So this is the 5 simple steps that needs to be carried out. After this has been completed, we will share you earn a badge as a cook clean advocate, and also a certificate will be given to you to continue the work of advocacy in the clean cooking industry. So to register for this event, the registration link will be shared on the chat box as we speak. And after this webinar, we are also going to share this with the attendees and the contacts we have. So we encourage everyone who is on this call, not just for us, because I see that most of us here, we have done the advocacy work, but more importantly, we should share it with our contacts, with our connections, so that we can continue the message of clean cooking to reach the grassroots and everyone who may not be able to, or who may have not been able to join us for this webinar. So this is just what we wanted to add as one of the perks we have for one of the programs that we've initiated for this webinar series that we've initiated. And another one, it's also about the opportunities corner. So as we continue in the webinar series, we'll be bringing in opportunities within the clean cooking industry. So maybe funding opportunities, job opportunities, like Mr. Mohammed said, that clean cooking can be a source of livelihood also to help somebody um, earn a living through activities and maybe sale of clean cook stove, servicing of it, maybe the EPC and so on. So we'll be bringing in these opportunities so that people can understand the what is available in the industry and also position themselves very well to also tap into these opportunities as we go on. So that's what we want to add. We'll still share this information more as we continue in the program. Thank you. One over to you.
Thank you very much for that succinct explanation of the eligibility criteria for the Cook Clean advocates. I mean, there are just 5 in number. If I were you, I would quickly register. The link is in the chat box. The link to register for the Cook Clean advocates is in the chat box. So you just tap on the link and then you input the required information and you'd get to hear back and hear from us on the level of the status of your application rather. So we'll be progressing to the paper presented, sorry, the panel discussion rather. And for the panel discussion, let me share my screen. For the paper presentation, we'll be having three panelists join us. Sorry about that. So the panel session would last for about 30 minutes and still to be focused on the topic for today's discussion, aligning clean cooking policies in Africa with global standards, opportunities and challenges. And we'll be having policy experts, we'll be having speaker from the private sector as well join us to share valuable insights, to share their experiences, their contributions, and the lessons they have learned so far in their different field of endeavors with relation to the clean cooking space. So the panel session would last for 30 minutes. We are already behind time, but we'll try to manage our time. So the first panelist that will be on this panel discussion is Princess Odiaka. She is the head secretariat and also the vice president, Nigerian LPG expansion implementation program in Nigeria. Also a founder rather, Trifinity Intelligence Consult Limited, where she runs a software platform that delivers cooking gas services in underdeserved areas across Africa. She has also been involved in policy work with the UNDP and the Federal Ministry of Environment. She was also part of the policy review for the 7 NDC sectors 2021 and also a clean cooking expert in the development of Nigeria's clean cooking policy. She is a trained carbon market expert by the government of Nigeria through the National Council on Climate Change and has gained various certifications from GIZ and UNITA in areas such as audit, monitoring and evaluation, introduction to sustainable finance, amongst others. And she'll be bringing a wealth of experience and her knowledge to this panel session. She'll be sharing valuable insights on the work she has been doing in relation to policy around clean cooking. We'll also be having Mr. Mohammed Lukumanu join us on the panel session as well, for the benefit of those that did not join from the beginning. We already introduced Mr. Mohamed Dukumanu. He is the CEO of Ghana Alliance for Clean Cookstoves and Fuels, and he is a development practitioner. He has special interest in clean cooking, climate change, adaptation, human rights, gender equality, social inclusion, women empowerment, and social accountability. So these persons will be bringing their insights to the discussion and would move swiftly to the panel discussion proper. So,
When you forgot to introduce Said's wife, the chairman of Africa's Sierra Leone is also on the call and is ready to join the panel session.
pardon me for that oversight. We also have Mr. Sahid Swahid from Africa, Sierra Leone, and he would be bringing his own perspective from the private sector as to what the private sector can contribute to aligning the clean cooking policies in Africa with the global standard. So we'll be having these three persons join us on the panel discussion. Please kindly put on your videos. I can see Mr. Mohammed's video is on, but I can't see for Princess Odiaka. I can see Mr. Said Swed. It's a pleasure having you on this webinar. Thank you for joining in.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for having me.
Princess Odiaka, your video is still not on. Yes, she has a technical issue, but can you hear me? Okay.
I hear you.
Okay. Welcome and thank you for joining in as well. So we'll proceed to the panel discussion. And this panel discussion is basically aimed at providing an opportunity for you to provide your insights, to share your experiences, share what you've learned in the field of work. I mean, as speakers they have gathered experiences for a quite number of years, and this would really enrich this discussion. So I will be starting with Princess Odiaka. Of course, ladies, there is a popular saying that says ladies first. So I'll be starting with you, ma'am. We know that policy is very important for anything to be put to bed, for anything to happen. The policy is the implementation framework that drives any plans of the government. If the government have something in mind, they would have to work around the policies, create the policies from the starting point, from the engagement with the stakeholders, getting to know about the needs, even at grassroots level as well. So policy is actually very important. My question is coming from the angle of has been working in the policy sector. I mean, you've worked with the UNDP and policy implementation with regards to clean cooking. So I want to know from your perspective, from your own context, what policy gaps, what do you think are the policy gaps that hinder the adoption of clean cooking in Africa from your own context?
Okay, thank you very much, Uwem. I think before I answer your question, I appreciate the organizers of this direction. Actually, this consulting. I was head of secretariat, National LPG Expiry. But anyways, when it comes to policy, I think policies are kind of tools that government use to bring about transformations, changes, and taking the clean cooking sector. Yeah, I believe that these policies are simply a response to presidential commitments. I mean, not just for Nigeria, really, but and not with Africans. I think it's just a global phenomenon, right? That a whole lot of governments are kind of responding with um, concept about clean cooking, right? And you find out that the global community is saying, I think emissions should be reduced from various sectors. And finally, they also identified a clean cooking sector for Nigeria. Clean cooking is the third, or rather, should I say the second emitting sector in Nigeria, where we have over 500 million metric tons of carbon emitted uh, from the clean cooking sector. And so you find out that Nigeria, first of all, um, setting potential commitments of Paris Agreement, they want to reduce emission. But again, for them to reduce that emission, for them to put it in the national clean cooking policy had to come in. I mean, apart from other energy sources, really, that again, other commitments have been made towards that, right? But again, within the clean cooking sector, we find out that the policy really strongly recommends the use of LPG as a transport fuel, the use of electric cooking, biomass, biofuels, and you find out that all these fuels has actually been given a kind of quota. If LPG taking about, I mean, the lion's share, because it is something that we can say that Nigeria has I mean, the gas, we have the gas there, right? And we cannot just dump the gas and move over to electric cooking or biofuels, right? And so that was one of the reasons that Nigeria took up LPG as a transitional fuel and also allowing it to have a lion's share. Then we have the mix. So when we talk about mix, it's just basically the electric cooking. We have the electric cooking taking up about 20% share. Of course, by 2030, we believe that Nigeria should have moved towards electric cooking, living up from gas. And again, for the biofuels, we talk about biofuel, that's the ethanol, the methanol. You find out that they're also taking about 50% share, 20% share, 30% share. And funny enough, because firewood is something that has been used over the years, within the energy mix for the clean cooking, we discovered that firewood has about 70% share, right? And now during for the clean cooking policy, we see that the government have moved it downwards, right? Has revised it downwards. So it has a very lower share of up to 30-40%, right? Because we are moving away from the firewood. And so with these policies, it is not a shelf policy, it's a live document. And so we found out that the government further started developing other actions that will feed in or that will start implementing those policies. Give you an example, you talk about the carbon market. We have already carbon players in Nigeria. However, there is no policy to strengthen that sector. And that is why you see the government through the NCCC designing the carbon market, training the private sector, the public sector, in fact, the entire stakeholder within that value chain, so that we can strengthen the carbon market and so that investor confidence can also be gained, in as much as we know that clean cooking is going to be trading within the carbon market system, right? Alongside every other clean energy or clean transitions and all that. Then I must also say that last year, Trifinity enabled Nigeria to become a member of the Global Electric Cooking Coalition. And what does that say? Now, from the international perspective, there are a lot of funds available, right? But a country as an entity cannot access those funds if there are certain criteria they do not meet. For the clean cooking fund, I mean, for the electric cooking fund, for Nigeria to access that, they had to become a member. And that was one of the things we ensured that Nigeria came into, and that is why we are having the MEX sponsoring, or the FCDU through MEX sponsoring market readiness assessment for the electric cooking. We have a whole lot of conversations, not just for the FCDU, but every other development partners. You now see electric cooking conversations coming on board, opening up another channel. And what does that tell you? It tells you that while Nigeria is committed to the 2016 net zero, right, we are also committed to the transition, right, through the policies, through the plans, through enabling environments and all that. Yeah, I think that's basically, there are actually a lot, but because of time, really, let me just stop here now. So we'll give others up.
Of course, I can't agree less. What you said is definitely what is on ground. There is data to show for it that the carbon market plays a major role in promoting clean cooking adoption, because most of these projects require huge sums of amounts. And of course, there is need for financial support from the carbon market, and this cannot be harnessed if there are no structures, no infrastructures in the country. For example, in Nigeria, we are yet to come up with carbon market framework, the policy, although the clean cooking policy is on ground, but the carbon market framework, which would set out the level of engagement, the legal aspects to how the carbon market players would engage in the carbon market, is not ready. And this has dealt a negative consequence on the advancement of clean cooking. So, like I said earlier, I can't agree less. What you're saying is definitely what is on ground. So, we're moving to Mr. Mohammed Aminu, from the perspective of your country, from perspective of Ghana, as the CEO of Ghana Alliance for Clean Cookstoves and Fuels. We need your perspective on this particular question, which is about what are the policy gaps that you've seen in Ghana that affects the widespread adoption of clean cooking, and what can the government do to address that issue?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It seems someone's mic is on. Please kindly mute your mic. I think we are good now. No. Mr. Mohammed, you're muted.
It's okay now.
Yes, I can hear you. I believe everyone can hear you.
Yes, definitely we have a number of policy issues that we need to pay attention to. One is the clean cooking market development. The manufacturers of the various technologies have to go to market to sell it, and it's very difficult to sell. There was investors who are ready to provide a lot of financing, and the manufacturers will tell you, if I take the facility and produce, I cannot sell it. Where will I sell it? And it is a challenge also for financing, because when you go to bank to take facility, the assessment and the returns, that the assessment that is conducted is not favorable to the cookstove manufacturer. So if we have government developing or formulating policies that would provide minimum structured demand market. For instance, we do school feeding program in several schools about in the country. I can say about over 10,000 schools are doing feeding programs. And if government insists that the caterers providing these meals should be using clean technologies, even if not the fuel, clean cook stoves. That is not a small market for the manufacturers to target. If we have all public institutions, government is doing social protection, government is doing emergency services in displaced population. So if government procures cook stove in deployment of relief items to displaced populations, that is not a small market. So we need some of these policies that will create some minimum structured demand market that the market or the finance market will see clearly as your target, and that will facilitate, that will enable you to produce and push to the market, that will also enable you access financing for your activities. And all people doing public cooking, agro processing, using a lot of firewood, restaurant, all of them should be required to use clean technologies, at least cook stoves if they are not using fuel. Then another one is the infrastructure gap. You have a target of 50% rural LPG access, but you send stoves and cylinders and they are not served by gas. So that is a major gap that we need to address, so that we are trying to do the cylinder recirculation to address that, so that without fuel LPG refill station, you can move fuel cylinders from bottling plants across the country. So that is still a gap we need to address. And one major thing is that Ghana has high electricity coverage, over 87% or around that. But we have not aligned clean cooking to this electricity penetration. We provided and promoted expanded electricity, it's everywhere, and yet we are not cooking with it. So we need policies that would promote e-cooking, because the infrastructure is already there, that can bring down costs of electric cook stoves, and then to be affordable to households, using good financing model to enable people to pay for it. That can be very, very helpful in getting people to use the electricity infrastructure to do cooking activities. Then taxes. We are doing well with our local content. You cannot import cook stove and do public programs. So government will not buy imported cook stove for our program. So that is forcing everyone to set up production in Ghana. Companies like Ben, EnviroFit have all set up factories now. They started assembling and they are now set up to produce, so that they can participate in the local market. That is good. But for the local manufacturers, they need some tax rebates or exemption reduction, so that they can bring quality materials and be able to produce quality stuff, rather than relying on scrap materials which are of low quality and affecting the quality of the stove. Then another thing I'll talk about is support. You talked about the carbon market. It's very difficult to access it, high cost. So if government can provide supportive services, research and development, to do the ISO testing of 3-unit stoves, it's costing 18,000 Ghana cedis. And that is not small for the local manufacturer. So government can do something about this. The Carbon Market Office can facilitate project development, which they are doing. They can do more about that one. And then set up renewable energy authority to promote access to this renewable energy, biofuels, and solar and others. We have renewable energy fund aimed at promoting that. But without this authority, there is very little action. You go to Energy Commission, you go to the Ministry of Energy, they are dealing with huge issues of electricity, LPG, and you take biogas issues there, it's not receiving attention. So if we have a dedicated renewable energy agency, I think there is also renewable energy fund that will complement the effort that we are making in the country. So in the meantime, these are some of the policy gap, and we need to take measures to address them and maximize the effort in clean cooking promotion in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was quite a very exhaustive response. You touched on the infrastructures, the gaps in the infrastructures, and the need for those infrastructures to be put in place. And one thing that caught my attention was you mentioned that there is about 87% access to electricity in Ghana, if I got it correctly. That is a wonderful opportunity to tap in. I mean, cooking with electricity is one of the clean cooking solutions. We have the electric pressure cookers, the rice cookers, and like you mentioned, it would go a long way to save costs. And if someone says that I can save costs, there is electricity, then the person will be encouraged to cook with electricity, which is one of the clean cooking solutions. And you also talked about the carbon market as well. That the atmosphere in Ghana seems to be very encouraging for clean cooking to thrive, and that is really applaudable. Thank you very much for the response. We'll be moving swiftly to Sahid Swed, who is from the private sector. He's the MD of Africa Sierra Leone, and he'll be giving us the Sierra Leone perspective to the policy gaps in Sierra Leone. So over to you, Mr. Zahid. Please, can you put on your video? Okay, good to have you back.
Yes, sorry, I got interrupted halfway, so just please repeat your question.
Okay, the question is, what policy gaps do you see hindering the widespread adoption of clean cooking technologies in your country, in Sierra Leone, and what do you think the government can do to address this?
Well, for us, I think we're still a bit slow in terms of. There seems to be an echo again somewhere along the line. We seem to have been be slow, but recently there are quite a few government offices that are showing interest. There's a presidential initiative for clean cooking and environmental issues. So we're getting a lot more invitations to some of these workshops, but no real policy has been put in place. Now, the good thing we can appreciate over the years is when we started as AfriGas, we were able to get some waivers, like Mr. Mohammed was saying, in terms of taxes. So some taxes and sales tax were exempted in terms of LPG. And so we were able to bring our prices down to make it more available. However, with over the years, with market changes, it's not been easy to maintain a positive acquisition of more cylinders. In terms of policy, we need, like I mean, we basically need more information on carbon credits. We need funding. In terms of Sierra Leone, the biggest hindrance is the initial purchase of the first set that the consumer will have to pay for, which is about $40 in Sierra Leone. In local currency, over the past 2 years, we've lost more than 50% of our currency value. So prices jumped over almost within a very short period of time, doubled in prices. All of these things have not helped really. In terms of what policies, again, we like to look at what has been done in other countries, especially in West Africa. Ghana has gone a long way. For us, even the Clean Cooking Alliance has been having challenges being set up. So we are still way behind. in terms of creating the right policies, unfortunately. So we look to learn from our neighbors. Apologies, the power just went out. So again, for clean cooking, electrical cooking in Sierra Leone is still not a good option. We look to learn. We look to learn from what has happened in neighboring countries that have similar economies, similar habits, in order for us to learn from them and move on. But we certainly need more information on carbon credits. It's non-existent here in Sierra Leone. There's no funding for assistance. In some of the workshops we've been to, the charcoal market is around almost $26 million worth. And so for government to take any particular policy to stop charcoal, they're basically stopping the livelihoods of many, many people. And so again, it becomes a very big challenge for them to find them a replacement. So we have a lot of challenges, and we're looking at how others have overcome it. There are lots of funding available, but the truth is the funding that are coming to Sierra Leone for clean cooking don't seem to be sustainable in my view at this time. It's opportunistic. Recently, an organization got some carbon credit funding, and they were giving away free cook stoves. But when you give a free cook stove without providing the right information as to why they need to use it, and they're not paying anything for it, it just it's just a tick in the box that has happened. Somebody ticked the box and they got some funding from some donor, but in effect, the local uptake is not happening really. I don't want to sound too negative, but we've been everything we've done in terms of gas in Sierra Leone has been done on a personal, on a private basis. We appreciate that government waived the duties, but unfortunately last year they added 5% again. So after many talks on reducing and finding subsidies and whatnot, they saw it as adding 5% will give some revenue. So again, I think they looked at where they can find revenue. They saw, okay, these guys are not paying anything. Let's put 5%. It might not be detrimental, but it will still bring some revenue to the government. And I think that's how they did it. So we've tried to lobby again now. But like I said, we have quite a few offices, government-related offices. The Ministry of Environment is involved. The Presidential Initiative Office is involved. There are quite a few workshops now that are taking, bringing attention to clean cooking, and not just with gas. Now, we as AfriGas, we provide gas, but efficient cook stoves. There are quite a few producers of efficient cook stoves. But again, testing them has been a challenge. The city council has had quite a few initiatives as well. But like I said, we go into these workshops. There's a lot of good talk. There's a lot of initiative and time. People are finding ways to do something. It has not yet trickled down to anything sustainable. So we look to the ones who have crossed those bridges to help us find the shortcuts in the jargon, and because there's a lot of environmental and clean cooking jargon and the policies and whatnot. Effectively, how does it get the end user to use this in a way that is cost effective for him and yet profitable to the private sector for it to be sustainable? We don't have any subsidies in Sierra Leone. We appreciate that we have other issues, and so the government cannot afford to give subsidies. So the only thing we've been able to do is to really reduce some of the taxes, like we said.
Thank you very much. Definitely, I agree with you on that, because recently, Toro Energy Limited carried out, were commissioned by Modern Energy Cooking Services to carry out a cooking market readiness assessment for e-cooking mass scale up in Sierra Leone. And then we saw some of these things that you highlighted, and I agree with you that in terms of policy, there are lots of gaps there. There are workshops ongoing, and there are symposiums with different stakeholders, and a lot are being said, but nothing is done yet to implement. The subsidies are not there. The infrastructures are not there. And these are the policy gaps you're talking about. And like you said, the government can go a long way to ensure that there is a subsidy for this, like a kind of a financial encouragement from the government to ensure that to encourage people to go into these. I can understand your pain from the private sector perspective, having to this is your means of livelihood, yet no aid from the government on this. So I definitely agree with you on that. And for the next question, I'll still start with you. It's basically a follow-up question from the question I asked earlier, which is how can the private sector be incentivized to continue in the business? I mean, if there are no incentives, nobody will be encouraged to go into the business of manufacturing or maybe distributing clean cooking solutions. So what are the interventions that governments can do to incentivize the private sector?
When we started, we actually provided private subsidy to the original cylinder in order to increase the uptake. We assumed that with refills we will recover the cost of the cylinder. The unfortunate situation was because we have very porous borders in terms of Guinea and Liberia and Sierra Leone. There's a free movement of goods and services and people. We noticed that our cylinders were not coming back to us. And we noticed that the price we were putting for the cylinder was cheaper here in Sierra Leone than it is in Liberia and Guinea. And so our cylinders were trickling out. And so we could not recover our original investment in that idea of subsidizing the cylinder because it never came back. If those cylinders were still in Sierra Leone, we know that they will be coming back for refills, we will recover. Unfortunately, that forced us after a while to stop that subsidy and to just continue with a cost recovery system. So we're still cheaper than Guinea and Liberia. So we're still having a challenge of having to refinance our cylinder purchases. But now at least we're recovering the cost of that cylinder in order for it not to dent our cash flow and our margins. But that created a very severe slowdown in the uptake. Now, we don't have enough data to show whether that uptake that was there originally was local or whether it was the same cylinders that were going out. That information is speculative. We don't have realistic data to show how many cylinders actually trickled out or not. For now, what we've had to do is, based on the cost recovery system that we have, we also have to ration the cylinders every once in a while in order to ensure that nobody is taking advantage. It is almost double the price of a cylinder between between Liberia and Sierra Leone. So small traders can easily make a relatively good profit by just taking it even in retail terms, crossing over to Liberia and selling the cylinder there because they don't have a branded system in some of these markets. For clarity, you have in some markets you have people buying an independent cylinder and going and filling it, and you have the branded cylinders that are provided by the refillers. So our system in Sierra Leone is there are two companies. Each of us have our own branded cylinders. We refill it and we resupply to the market. So nobody has an independent cylinder that should go and be refilled in a station, which helps us to control some of these safety aspects and also to maintain control of the cylinders. Yet, we can tell you how many cylinders we've introduced to the market, but we cannot tell you how many are still in circulation, like I mentioned. And so for policies, border control is one of the things, but again, usually these are not done in a large scale system for people to see. The challenges are real and the solutions are not very easy. And so it's just a lot of trial and error in terms of how things are done. If indeed there are some carbon credits that can fund these cylinders, and this is a regional thing, then of course, whatever benefit Liberia or Guinea gets from the cylinders in Sierra Leone will basically be helping those markets. And if there's funding for these cylinders, especially the initial cylinder to the market, that will cut down a huge impact on us. And of course, as volumes increase, our prices can come down. When we started originally in the gas business, we were doing barely 10 tons a month, and now we're doing almost 300 to 400 tons, which is still a very small fraction compared to what Ghana and Nigeria and Ivory Coast are doing. But we're on a relatively good trajectory. But it's been slowed down a lot by some of these challenges that we mentioned. Again, I'm not an expert on government policy, so I'm presenting the challenges and hoping that some of these things have been sorted in other markets, and we can learn and copy how they were sorted and probably do the same here.
Of course, we expect you to give your perspective from your own from your sector as a private sector, and you've done justice to that. It's quite unfortunate that you have to go through such a whole number of stress to produce and brand the cylinders, like you said, and then the cost recovery strategies. You mentioned the carbon market situation in Sierra Leone, and this is a very important, a very vital point, because the expenses involved are quite large, and individual or finances from the company cannot show that this financial responsibilities, and definitely the finance from the carbon market lies untapped, is yet to be tapped, because there are no frameworks, like you said, in Sierra Leone, and we hope that that will be addressed. The policymakers, the researchers, everyone joining, we have them amongst us and they are listening, and we hope that they take the message to the right quarters for this challenges to be addressed. I'll be moving to Princess Odiaka. My question will be coming from the angle of community engagement. You are a founder of Trifinity Consult Limited, and you promote clean cooking adoption in underserved communities. You seem not to hear me. Can you hear me? You are muted.
I'm hearing you.
Okay. So
Trifinity Intelligence Consult Limited.
Sorry about that. Trifinity Intelligence Consult Limited, and you run a program called Cook Blue for underserved communities. So this question borders on community engagement in the course of your work, in the course of executing your programs. How can we make community engagement more impactful to the community in terms of clean cooking adoption? How do you approach the community? Do you carry them along from the start to finish? Like, what role does that play in execution of your activities?
Okay, thank you very much, Owen. I think Cook Blue is not really limited to the rural areas. It's actually for the urban. However, because of what we call the corporate social responsibility, we decided to deepen our roots within the community space, right? And I started with my own community, and that's the beautiful story, right? So people really cope with gas within this community, right? And at some point in Nigeria last 2 years and last year, we discovered a whole lot of skyrocketing of prices, and not just for LPG and for every other thing else. So one day we kind of were walking around the community and said to ourselves, these plastics that are littered around, it's a common thing in Nigeria. When you drink with a plastic bottle, you throw it away, right? I mean, don't laugh too much about it, but that's what we usually do, right? And we decided to say to ourselves, okay, how about the community women? How about them picking all these and using it as a means of trade by barter, right? So that they can continue cooking with their gas. And so 2023, we started what we call the waste to wealth. A lot of women, we have about more than 100 women now and more than 6 communities now engaged with that waste to wealth. And we said to ourselves, Now we are removing waste from the community, but still they are cooking with firewood. I mean, they left LPG and they are now back to firewood, right? I would told them, you know what? Why don't we scale up with trash to cook? So what does that mean? It simply means that these women trade. So for them to buy LPG, right? They don't need to pay with cash anymore. They just trade with their waste, right? Because again, that waste is actually money. And in that sense, a lot of women like felt, okay, wow, this is another exciting opportunity. And um, I think in this by Q1 of 2021, we will launch the first. I mean, we've gotten a lot of um, approvals for that, and we're going to be launching that trash to cook finally by Q1 of 2025. So we've actually tested, right? So, but it's a testament of what clean cooking is all about within the community level. So these women, they understand that LPG is good. They understand that electric cooking is good. They understand every other form of clean cooking technologies and food. They really understand it. However, because of the economic suppression on the household income, they tend to find other means and now prioritize. So in their mind, cooking is not prioritized. However, we coming in within the community helps them to prioritize cooking, to know that, okay, you know what, what you have, you can trade for those clean cooking technologies. So, and funny enough, some other thing we decided to kind of add a bit of salt and spice into what we were doing is to start engaging in empowerment programs, just to encourage them. So some of these women really don't have anything to do. For example, the housewives, they don't really have anything to do. So we told them, you know what, because your culture does not really allow you to step outside. So we're not dampening the culture, but we are enhancing the culture, right? And so because probably their culture doesn't really, I mean, when I say culture, I mean husbands don't allow women to work. They rather stay at home and give birth, right? So what we do is this. You don't need to leave your house. There is a business you can start within your house and you still earn. And so we encourage them, we empower them, and that is what they are doing, and they're happy about it. Funny enough, they are converting other women as well. So this is just a testament of what clean cooking, how clean cooking can, rather I would say, clean cooking narrative, can be changed within the community systems, right? But finally, let me also use this opportunity to say that Cookblue is a software really that delivers LPG as a service for in a plastic composite canister, right, for families and businesses, right? And so the plastic composite canisters are actually tech-enabled. They are IoT-based. When Sahid was just talking, I was just waving my head like this because I can understand his concerns and plight. So for us, we've not really experienced such because of the way we modeled our technology. First, we de-risked the initial cost of buying the LPG stove. The women don't need to buy it. So our business model is basically the marketer own cylinder model where the women just cook with the gas, right? They don't need to have the cylinder. They don't even need to buy it. We don't need it to buy it. If you even ask us to say, we'll say we're not selling. You understand that kind of model, right? And so they're just free to buy, right? Sorry, free to cook with the gas itself. Then secondly, the issue of gas finishing within their period of cooking and all that doesn't happen. Why? Because we have an IoT embedded in that gas cylinders that tells us really when the gas is about to finish. So there's an alert for that, right? And probably you might want to say, oh, but these women are not tech savvy. Of course, they don't need to be tech savvy to use our product, right? Those in township, those in the cities like you and I, right, are tech savvy, right? So they can really download the mobile app. However, those in the community, we do the monitoring ourselves, we get the alerts ourselves, and possibly they get just the SMS and all that, right? And in that way, we still encourage them, we still involve them. So there's this inclusion, right? So that is inclusion. We include them in whatever it is that we are doing, and they really feel belong. So we can't call them rural women, actually. Thank you.
Of course, that's true. Like, it's such a beautiful initiative that you're executing. I mean, getting the women, the community to exchange the plastic. I mean, that speaks to the climate action aspect and also for the clean cooking aspect. And they're able to kill two birds with one stone. That's actually really nice, because one of the challenges for clean cooking adoption is the cost, especially for those in the rural areas where they're the ones that uses most of this dirty cooking fuels like firewood and charcoal, and then somebody is bringing something new to them. And coming from the encouragement perspective, not asking for money, that's really a beautiful initiative. Well done, ma'am. Thank you. So I'll be moving to the next question, and this question will be directed to Mr. Mohammed Aminu. As the CEO of Ghana Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, I believe that you've had experiences with international standards in applicable even at the regional level as well. With regards to clean cooking, the international standards, you mentioned it in your presentation while you were making your presentation. So I just want to know, how can international standards be adapted to reflect Africa's unique cultural and economic context? It's one thing to recommend a standard, but you'd have to take into consideration what is tenable in the community, their cultural practices, their cooking technologies, their preference. So how can these international standards be adapted to the cultural standards? You are muted.
Yes, thank you very much. Is it okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. Yeah, for the international standards, generally the biomass fuels, solid fuels, charcoal, and firewood may not be or are not considered as clean fuels, but generally that is what we use here in Africa. Many of our countries are relying heavily on these fuels, and it is for the kind of tastes and then cultural or traditional practices that we have come from over the evolution. Yes, so you find people telling you when they cook on LPG, it doesn't taste as well as it tastes on the biomass. And a simple one is when you grill tilapia in an LPG oven, people say it doesn't taste the way they want it. So much as from the global perspective, WHO and others are not considering biomass as solid biomass as clean fuel, but we realize that that is what we can easily produce here. That is what we largely rely on. It has served our purpose, and it's not a day's job to just switch to electric or LPG for various reasons. So for many of our countries, we want to replace the traditional stoves that are less efficient and more polluting with more efficient cook stove. That is why we have the improved cook stove concept that allows you to use the biomass that you are used to, that you want to grill your tilapia with, but in a more efficient cook stove. So the GICO models, for example, in Ghana, or the Japan models, currently perform up to 40% thermal efficiency. That is the requirement for you to do carbon activity with it. And that is from a low of about 15, 11% a decade ago. So they've made substantial improvements so that it comes within the standards approved for biomass cook stoves. The emissions in terms of for charcoal, in terms of CO, is still high, and then for wood, the PM is still high. So you find across Africa, the biomass, the charcoal stoves are either doing well on PM 2.5 and not doing well on CO, and the firewood is doing well up to 3 star on one and not on the other. So, but the levels of it's a voluntary test. The emissions are voluntary tests. So, but company is not regulated at the moment, but they are encouraged to improve the emissions performance of the stoves. And some are recording 1 star by Ghana's standards, and which is not too bad. So that is for the meantime, whilst we make a lot of effort to educate people to see that clean fuels are the ultimate. So we are not saying remain on biomass. So we are saying by 2030, everybody relying on biomass should be doing so on improved cook stoves that are less polluting, that are less emitting, whilst we make the significant effort of transition to cleaner fuels. So for the meantime, the deployment of the biomass cook stove stays and is doing well on the carbon market as a short-term measure so that everyone polluting is shifted to a less polluting technology whilst we let people see the need to move upwards. So I think that is the approach. In East Africa, in West Africa, this is the high reliance on the biomass is there, and people are trying to look at taste and other cultural practices, and even that is what is there. So that is the balance that we are adopting, and we need to do more education for people to appreciate the clean fuel perspective. There are perceptions of LPG being expensive, being unsafe. So these are perceptions that we address, and with also government taking additional actions to minimize. For example, with the LPG accidents in Ghana, a lot of fuel stations have been decommissioned, and compliance with safety standard has been taken. And since the last dangerous explosions that we have over a decade ago, there has not been such incidents because of the measures adopted. And we are moving to the cylinder recirculation to minimize that risk of transporting LPG heavily on tanker trucks and having a number of refill stations that have to be struggling with safety issues. So that is, and with electricity, it's actually cheaper to cook with electricity. The MEX is in Ghana doing demonstrations of that. The University of Ghana, ISE, has also done a study of that that has shown that it's cheaper cooking with electricity, it's cheaper cooking with electricity, LPG. So those perceptions would be addressed through behavior change education, and then gradually everyone should move. And by our energy transition plan, we had first 70 by 2070, and now we've come down to 2062 or so, with the target to transition to cleaner fuels and clean cooking generally. So I think this is the strategy we are working on, even if not pronounced. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, the cultural preferences has to be taken into consideration in line with the just transition. I mean, you can't expect everyone to drop whatever they were using and move.
Yes, I think let me just add one thing. Let me just add one thing. We also are making effort on alternative solid fuels, briquettes especially. We have a number of feedstock like coconut husk, cocoa pod, sawdust, rice husk, a lot of this. So a number of companies are emerging and scaling in these technologies. And at the moment, they are exporting them out of the country. And then there is less use of them in the country. So we need to, and with the women agro processing activities, this is being introduced for them to use the waste product of their activity to generate briquettes to continue firing their activities like shea butter producers. The waste from the butter is used to produce briquette for them to fire their activities. I'm currently in the Western region deploying industrial stove, charcoal, and then fish smoking stove. They have a lot of coconuts, and we are going to introduce to production of briquette from the coconut huts and things, so that they will be relying on this alternative solid fuel. There is a project done at CSIR by the researchers to introduce women along the fishing communities to the production of this alternative solid fuel, so that they won't be cutting the limited uh, uh, trees there for firewood, but rather relying on the abundance of coconut huts in the area to produce this thing. So gradually, this shift will help us to continue to have alternative or briquettes to do the biomass cooking rather than relying on the forest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, you can't take the place of carrying the uh, the local community along, carrying the country in context along in the transition to clean energy based on global standards. Thank you for the insights you've shared. So we'll be wrapping up this panel discussion with final words, just in 1 minute. What are your final words, sir?
Thank you very much. I think we need to work together. At the ECOWAS level, at ICRI level, there is the West African Clean Cooking Fund, and there has been collaboration at that level. ICRI is working on standards for ethanol, for the fuel and the stove for the region. So that level of collaboration at governmental level should come down, be cascaded to the private sector activities. The alliances, national clean cooking alliances, have to work together. We've started the effort, it's not moving fast. So we need to do that. The countries like Sierra Leone, where they are in the process of formulation, we have to support ourselves to do that. We've done that with a number of countries in the sub-region, to share our documents, to share our experience and guiding documents that help them to start and then to progress. So that is one level. At the African level, with the East, especially East African colleagues, we have some partnership programs that have brought us together, and we continue to work on one platform, sharing experiences under the Clean Cooking Alliance platform. And they are guiding us to have the African platform, which is working in conformity with the Global Clean Cooking Alliance. So that is one way to move forward. Let's work together, share experience, and see how we can support between the two countries, private sectors, civil society organizations, and encourage our government agencies to move. We have to move the government in this regard. Government will leave the sector to us, but we will have to get government to carry us along. And as we speak, we have a lot of progress in Ghana with government considering financing GACO, because we serve on government national committees and developing joint program for the sector, which is compelling government to finance it because we are going to implement some of them and they will provide the financing for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like you've said, the work is for
Yes.
everyone, the government, the private sector, the community, everybody has a part to play in the transition to clean cooking technologies and to clean cooking adoption. So I'll moving swiftly to Princess Obiaka. Just give us your final words in 1 minute. Please let's stick to time because we are already out of time. Thank you.
Actually, I'm running for another meeting now, so it's fine. So for me, it's a bit personal, because clean cooking has also affected personally, right, in my family. So I must say that whether you're a policymaker, whether you're a private sector, whoever you are, if you don't have passion for clean cooking, you will not just go to the right direction. You're not going to make the right decisions. You're not going to make the right commitment or even the right contributions for the policymakers to listen to and implement, right? So I'm thinking that it's on us for us to really start walking the talk. During the Christmas celebration, for those that are, and of course the New Year. Interestingly, I I was called upon to join in a cooking, and I made sure that they actually cooked with gas. We serve the whole lot of people, but we did that cooking with gas. That's my passion. That's how it is, right? And so I want to encourage. So it doesn't mean that it's only gas, of course, but I'm saying that we should really, really find passion for this clean cooking so that it can really blow out, right, every other harm that dirty cooking has really brought into our homes, into our countries, into our nations, and all that. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. Of course, you said nobody should wait for until you occupy a position or portfolio before you can advocate for clean cooking adoption. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Saeed. Let's get your final words on the way
I'll keep it
forward.
short. I think collaboration is key. Passion is also a necessary ingredient because it's a very tough market. It's very tough trying to convince people who've been using one thing for many, many years to do something else without any direct visible incentive. Because even the environmental issues, the health issues, are not clearly visible to the average user. They don't make the link then that a chest infection is a direct cause of many hours of inhaling that smoke. They don't see the link, and so some of the policies should be to increase the awareness, not just the financial burden that is there, because in Sierra Leone mainly our motto is cook clean, cook quick. The clean part is assumed to be you don't get your hands dirty with charcoal. It's not yet transgressing to the idea that it's a healthy choice. People are busy with their personal lives and their personal challenges. Environmental factors are still not at the forefront of the average consumer agenda at this time. So when we look at environmental issues, they're not easy for them to relate to. So all of these things, like you said, a joint a collaboration of the different ECOWAS markets. A lot of what we are challenged with have been overcome by some of these markets. It will help us a lot to see how it was overcome for us to get the shortcut rather than to step on every challenge again and reinvent the wheel. So collaboration, I think, is key, and with that comes passion. So I think these two ingredients would help us a lot, take us a long way.
Thank you very much. We'll move swiftly to the questions. Yes, excuse me. There are some questions in the chat box drawing from the presentation earlier by Mr. Mohammed Lukumana and as well from the panel discussions. So I would encourage the speakers to stay put for any questions that will be directed to them. So someone is asking here for Nahami Idris, is Ghana carrying out testing of tools, technologies, equipment, and field in their country? I guess this question is for Mr. Aminu Lukumanu to take that question.
Yes, thank you. We have the West Africa Cook Stove Testing Center, and it's an ISO certified center. They do ISO testing, and they serve West Africa. Thank you.
Okay, I believe Fanahami Idris is still on the call and has heard the response, and I believe it answers your question. The next question is also for you. Excuse me, Mr. Mohammed Aminu. What role can international cooperation and agreements play in promoting clean cooking in Africa? What role can international cooperation and agreements play in promoting clean cooking in Africa?
Yes,
That's the question.
thank you
Benjamin.
very much. This is very important, especially for the carbon market access. Under the Article 6, especially 6.2, that allows for transfer, what we call ITMO, internationally transferred mitigation outcome. Countries can countries can sign agreements, such as Ghana did with Korea, South Korea, Singapore, Switzerland, Sweden, and trade on carbon with the with Singapore, with South Korea, for instance. The government signed the bilateral, which allowed companies in Ghana to produce 500,000 cook stoves
Mr. Aminu,
and transfer the
voice is
carbon
breaking.
credit to companies in South Korea who paid for it.
Mr. Aminu, can you hear me? Your
Sorry?
voice is breaking.
Can I continue?
Okay, I think it's better now. Yes, continue. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I can continue.
Yes, you can.
Can I continue?
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much. So under this bilateral, countries signed this agreement to produce and transfer mitigation outcomes. So Ghana has signed these bilaterals with a number of countries, and then they pay for it. The local companies who deploy the stoves would receive the payment and then transfer the credit on the cook stoves to the foreign.
I guess there is a technical issue.
Partners who paid for it. So that is one way.
There is a technical issue.
Partners who paid for it. Is it better now? So that is one way.
There is a technical issue.
Partners who paid for it. Is it better now? So that is one way.
There is a technical issue.
Partners.
Please, can the technical team address this? Oh. Mr. Mohammed, you are muted. Yes, his network is quite slow. Can you hear me from your own end?
Is it okay now?
Yes, it's quite slow.
Is it okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
I think the network from Mr. Mohammed is really it's not very clear at this moment. Maybe we can take the next question when it will have time we can go through it.
Okay, definitely. I hope that answers your question, Benjamin. Feel free to ask questions, you could unmute and summarize your question, or you could drop it in the chat box. If you have any questions for the speakers, we are in the Q&A session now. Feel free to type your questions or you unmute and ask your questions.
Thank you, so much for your input and for the wonderful discussion that we've had today. I'm sorry we are way ahead of out of time, and I sincerely, on behalf of Tuvero Energy, I want to thank first of all Owen Johnson for the wonderful moderation, and also thank also Said Swipe for the input you've given. It's always a very nice experience listening to you and the passion that you have for the clean cooking industry. And I also want to thank Mohammed Aminu Lukman for the wonderful insights you shared. Indeed, I believe, and why we looked at coming up with this webinar series is more of a discussion series, is so that Africans can discuss about our unique challenges in Africa here, and we can come up with a united front when we are tackling issues. And of course, like it's been said here, knowledge sharing is really important, and experiences in Nigeria can help with maybe the policy formulation process that is going on in Sierra Leone. It can help, and that's why this 54 Sparks webinar, clean cooking webinar came up. Actually, the 54 you see there is for the 54 countries in Nigeria, sorry, in Africa. So that's where the name came from. So like I mentioned earlier, we are open to partnership. We've written to some of the alliance in Africa, like in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and thankfully we have Mr. Aminu here who is representing Ghana also. So we want to take this discussion further, and more importantly, we want to raise community cook clean advocates, people that can speak to others in the language that they understand. Because definitely this webinar will not be able to reach the lowest of down the ladder there. Because, but if we have people who are willing to go down there to discuss the why clean cooking is even important, like Swag said, if somebody doesn't understand why he needs to cook with a clean cook stove, then the essence of gifting him that clean cook stove is defeated at the start. So, but when it's understood, you can appreciation will be gotten from an aid that is being directed to clean cooking. So thank you very much. We will be sending information about possible partnership about this to as many partners that we can. We'll also share with Said also with Afrigas, and we'll also have another session on the 30th of this month. Then we will see how to bring in more partners and more um, international organizations involved in the clean cooking industry to have a more robust discussion around the challenges as it pertains the policy formulation in Africa to drive clean cooking. So on behalf of Tuvero Energy, I want to thank everyone that has taken out time to join. To Nabil, Benjamin. We also saw representatives from SC for All. They joined in earlier, and we also had people from NETS. They joined in earlier. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll pick up this discussion by on the 30th of this month. So on behalf of everyone again, thank you very much. All right. Okay, bye. Okay, before we go, sorry, before we go, can we just all put on a video? so that we take a group photograph. If you can put on your video wherever you are, help us do that so that we can have a group, sorry, a screenshot photograph, if I'll call it that, because, yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Thank you. So on behalf of Tavera Energy, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye. So, and there will also be a survey.